I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage in Southern California.
What we're going to do today on that charging system is I got out of the shop manual. So I printed out the pages so that we can just, go through the factory step-by-step diagnosis thing. I'm going to pull a distributor on this. This is a Lucas style. So with the Silver Cloud 3, Rolls and Bentley went to a different style ignition system. Previously, the pre-war cars, they all had dual points, 6-cylinder with 2 sets of points, except for the Phantom, I think, really early ones. But definitely the Silver Cloud 1 and Silver Cloud 2, they had distributors that had 2 sets of points. That one set of points would run 4 cylinders or 3 cylinders on the 6, and the other set of points would run the other bank or other cylinders. And the reason they had 2 sets of points, in my opinion, is that they wanted to extend the life of the points. Because every time a point, which I'm going to use that word a lot, you're going to see what they are physically. The way the ignition, the secondary ignition and primary ignition circuit work on these cars is the primary has the points. That's system voltage, 12 volts. And when it goes into the energized mode, what it does is it applies voltage to the coil. This is the coil, right? Which is a bunch of windings inside. And through induction, what it does is it creates high voltage. It's like a transformer in a way. So as it's charging up, the points are closed, so they're making contact. And as soon as you open those points, all that voltage in that coil has to go someplace. So it goes through the plug wires to the spark plugs, and it usually comes out 20,000, 20 to 40,000 volts. The current's low, so it won't kill you, but it'll definitely get your attention if you get sparked by one of those. So every time those points close, for each cylinder, when they open, it fires a cylinder, right? So they have to open and close a lot. So the reason they use dual points is to extend the life of those points, because every time they open, there's a spark. And when you take 2 pieces of metal, put them together, and you spark across them, it etches it. And that's why over time, they call it your points closing up. 2 things will happen. The point surface becomes corroded and melts away, so there's a bigger gap, or it doesn't make as good contact. And then the part that opens the points is usually either a phenolic or a plastic rubbing block that goes against the cam and goes up and down. So when you put points in, you're supposed to lubricate the cam with some special grease. But over time, what happens is that rubbing block gets shorter and shorter, so the points close up. So if the points close up, that means they're not opening. If they don't open, you're not going to get a spark. That's just the way it is. Pretty simple. Most people don't understand that. Electronic ignition is way better. There's no mechanical parts. It does it through electronic circuitry. Points don't wear out. Nothing wears out. You never have to readjust an electronic ignition. Ignition points, you have to change them on a regular basis, or readjust them, or clean them. There's a lot of things you do. So, as I said, they use 2 points, 2 sets of points that would run different parts of the engine. So when they went to the Lucas style, they still have dual points. And like I said, that's to extend the life of the points. But they changed it to where they fire all the cylinders. So the problem with the 2-point system that you split the firing between different cylinders is if they get a little bit out of, one of them gets a little bit more out of adjustment of the other, then they're not going to fire in a uniform way. And you can put it on a oscilloscope and you can see that half the cylinders are firing at different timings, because timing, that's the point that the spark plug fires where the piston is. That's timing. Okay, so the piston's coming up, you want to fire it a little bit before it gets to the top, so it starts to burn but pushes it down. If you fire it too far before it gets to the top, then what happens is you get some pinging. The piston will rock around in there, and that's that pinging noise you hear. So think about this. When the points open, is your timing point. Okay, so you're supposed to set them up so that the piston's in a certain position, the electron or the ignition knows where that is when the point's open. So as the points wear, that timing point will change because they'll start opening later and later and later as it wears, and later, and then eventually not at all. So when you set points, you always have to set your timing. It's critical to do both at the same time because that's how it works. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to pull this distributor out. I'll put it in the vise over there. I'll show you how the things work, and we'll talk about that. One easy way, I have seen Silver Cloud 2s that have the later style distributor. One thing they added when they went to this is a vacuum advance. Okay, so that's this little tube with this like drum or a bell looking mechanism on there. What that is a vacuum advanced mechanism. And inside here, right down the center there, is a sheet of rubber that seals the vacuum to this side of because this vacuum is what the suction in your engine. And this is ported vacuum. We're going to get real technical here. Ported vacuum is different from manifold vacuum. Manifold vacuum is the vacuum that the engine's producing at all times. Ported vacuum means they tap in to get vacuum right where the butterfly, this is where it goes in right here. So inside there, so look at it this way. So you've got your throttles. Do I have an open carburetor or no? The throttles open air. They let air into the engine. They're on inside of each of these carburetors. And when you're idling, your foot's not on the gas, that throttle's closed. So manifold vacuum is on the engine side. It's high vacuum. You want 19, 20 inches of vacuum at an idle. So as soon as you open that throttle to let more air in, this vacuum drops. So ported vacuum, they tap in right at that little point right there where the throttle blade hits the housing. And as you open the throttle, there's a whole bunch of air that goes by there, and that creates a suction too. That's called ported vacuum. And the reason they use the ported vacuum on the distributor is so if you're cruising down the road and you give it a little more gas, it's going to raise that vacuum so it advances the timing. When you advance timing, you get a power surge. So that's what that's supposed to do. It's supposed to help on highways and also from a stop to a point. If you go from a stop and you put the throttle wide open, there's no ported vacuum. It's only when you're at a cruise mode where the throttle's pretty close to close, but not quite. And then when you give a little more gas in it, just a little more gas. If you open it wide open, there's no vacuum advance. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put, unfortunately, but fortunately, the bonnet is aluminum on this car, as are the carburetors and a lot of other things. So it's really hard to find a good spot to put this. Right above it. So the distributor cap, you want to take that loose. There are two little spring clips on the sides. The other one's on the other side. They just pop out, usually by hand or by screwdriver. And then you can lift this up. Okay. And that's out of your way. You can take close note of which way your rotor. That's called the rotor. Okay. So on this system, get over here and I'll show you. You have the coil wire. This wire right here goes to the center. Okay. The coil wire, the high voltage, 30, 40,000 volts, goes to the center there. And as the engine's running and the points open and close, it's supposed to shoot a spark across to the different cylinders. The rotor is what does that. So as you can see, it has a center point right there, and it just rotates in. So it takes that high voltage, goes down to the center of this bar, and as it's coming by the cylinder and the point's open, it shoots a spark across there, and then it goes down to the spark plug and ignites the fuel air mixture under compression. So this, the reason you want to pay when you pull a distributor out is you want to pay attention to the way the rotor's pointing, because when you pull it out, you want to get it in the same spot. Otherwise, you're going to throw off the timing and the car will not start. It may backfire, blow up your mufflers. It happens. So fortunately, Rolls-Royce and Bentley were really sharp about this, is that rotor can only go one of two ways. And I'll show you when we have it out. But this one, right now, before we pull it out, is pointing back. Just remember that, that's all. We'll get a 3/8 wrench to disconnect the vacuum advance here, because that's not coming with it. All right, there's a little wire that goes to the coil, which I'm gonna try, hopefully we'll just pull off right here. See, it goes there. I'll show you where it goes once we get back there. If any of these wires are loose, you want to secure them, because that's like acting like points. And if you lose a connection, it's just going to fire the engine. So on the other side, you will see there is a screw slot or a bolt. Get my screwdrivers.